I read an article about a young boy who went to Europe on vacation with his family. They were staying in a hotel in some country, and he had been reading a book while lying on his bed. His family was going to go out, so he gently set his book face down, splayed out on his pillow, where it would wait for his return. But when he got back, the book was closed, the page marked by a piece of paper, and on the paper the chambermaid had written, "Sir, you must never do this to a book." I have never been a true bibliophile, a lover of books, for the book itself, I mean, as a physical object. I knew one once. His greatest pleasure, truly, if for me a little oddly, was to find a certain edition, the first if possible, of a hardbound book and buy it, bring it to his apartment, and install it lovingly on the shelves he had built, slipping it into its place with all the others, as if it were a stone in a Gothic cathedral. I remember reading about Larry McMurtry, Mr. Lonesome Dove, and his love of books. He had written what I was reading. He would acquire entire collections, and he ran a bookstore in a small, out-of-the-way Texas town. Lovers of McMurtry's work would make a pilgrimage to that town and gawk at his books, maybe even buy one or two, but I think, as a business, it eventually failed, and McMurtry had to sell his precious stock to someone else, but he still had that love for books. I have a respect for books. I grew up reading books, so I'm strictly old school when it comes to reading. I think of a book as a container, and some of them are very remarkable, like a Christmas stocking stuffed full of good things. An excellent book has also got some life in it, has a pulse, seems to draw breath. I do believe in the proper treatment of a book, and I will admit that I recoil when I see a book being mistreated. I would not have objected to the book on the pillow, but strangling a copy or breaking its spine, that's too much. I don't know if I would say that it rises to the level of a crime, but it surely falls low on any list of decent manners. I think a good book has got a lot of value in it. I know many people who do not share that belief. They think a book might be useful as a doorstop, or perhaps something in which you might press rose petals. I recall, rather vaguely I'm afraid, that I was working at a university teaching an introductory class in composition. It was one of those courses that none of the tenured professors would touch, so they got quackers like me to do it, a lot of work for very little recompense. One day, I don't know how, I became aware of a man who was being ignored by just about everybody else, especially the staff. The person was a poet who had been invited to come to the school and give a reading, and I guess he was going to do that later in the afternoon, and it appeared that until then, all he was going to get was a case of the academic cold shoulder. I thought that was somewhat stiff, and I felt sorry for him because he was a poet and nobody would talk to him. So I struck up a conversation with him, and after a few minutes I invited him to come with me to the next class I had, and he could do whatever he wanted. Talk to the students, read to them, dance and sing, have a good old time. He readily agreed to this, and so I introduced him to the group of about 30 as a poet and let him have the floor. There followed a rather booming silence, and he stood there not knowing what to do, and the students sat, savoring his discomfort. I suggested that he read a few of his poems. He was clutching a book, one that clearly he had written. He did that, one and then another, to no reaction, and then he said, "You know, I think you will like this one." And he read a poem about reading a book he did not like. More than that, he hated the book. No book he'd ever read had offended him the way this one did. The book infuriated him. He was angry. He wanted to kill that book. He was living out in the country, and he went outside and nailed that damn book to a tree. He grabbed a rifle and he began to shoot at the book. He described, in extremely non-poetic terms, exactly how he blew that book to pieces, shot by shot, and how great that made him feel. And the students loved it. When he was done, they applauded and cheered. Like any good entertainer, he knew when to quit. He thanked us and left, confident that he had an ace in the hole for his upcoming reading. I was appalled. I wanted to say something, but I did not. I was not going to play the role of literary pastor and deliver a lecture on book morality. I gave them an assignment and dismissed them. I have not read Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451 about the book burners, but I believe I share its sentiments. I thought the poem about killing the book was terrible, a corruption of writing, but I would not have taken the poem out and shot it to pieces. Silently deploring it was as far as I would go.